So director Steven Spielberg gave us some iconic films that have left a huge legacy. But now that he's off making vanity projects, director James Mangold from Ford v Ferrari and Logan fame has stepped in to make the last chapter of this iconic franchise. Does it live up to the hype, or should this film have just stopped when it was behind with Crystal Skull? I'll tell you guys in a minute. I do apologize for this review being late, but the weekend that I saw it, I took a break that weekend, and then the rest of the time I was getting my Mission Impossible reviews off the ground. But I did want to get my thoughts out there before I continued with my other reviews. By the way, the thing with the Fabelmans at the beginning, that was just kind of a joke. Though kind of true, there was stuff in that film that was brilliant. Some really good ideas. One of the most self-serving movies I've ever seen in my life. But that's not the point of this video. We're here to talk about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And in this film, an aging Indiana Jones is sent on one final quest to retrieve the lost dial of Archimedes. Let me talk about the decoration I have on the set right now. That's like a satchel that my mom got for me from like her Disney rewards account. She had a buildup of points and she thought that was cool. She got herself one and she got me one. And I put that, of course, because I'm reviewing Dial of Destiny. And I don't know. It might be I like the way that it hangs there. It might be a permanent fixture of the set until 2023 ends. I don't know. We'll see how things go. My expectations on this film were interesting, to say the least. If you guys saw my anticipated films of 2023 video, this was actually number 2, second only to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, which I'm going to talk about very soon, as I promised. But since then, my anticipation for this film has diminished based on some things that I heard from other people that I didn't want to hear, that I stumbled upon accidentally, and also the fact that I watched all these 4 films and just watching the structure of that trilogy and how perfectly Last Crusade ended everything. And then Crystal Skull was terrible. I still went into this film hoping to at least get a good film. I at least wanted a film that was better than Crystal Skull. Just give me a film that's a good time at the movies. And that's what I got. I enjoyed this film. It has its share of issues. But for one thing, this is a better directed film than Crystal Skull. The action in here is really entertaining. Especially this prologue at the beginning of the film, which is one of my favorite pieces of the entire movie, where you get a de-aged Harrison Ford, and it's set in the past, and there's everything going on there. I loved it. The de-aging effect, it still looks kind of fake, but I enjoyed that sequence nonetheless. It just felt like a classic Indiana Jones movie. But what really helps this action is that the cinematography is honestly kind of beautiful. Again, James Mangold, great director. He just finds a lot of shots that are very cool to look at. The way he adds in colors into a scene, it just makes everything pop. And of course, better cinematography than Crystal Skull. Crystal Skull, I said it was this weird digital thing where it looked overexposed and very fake with the CGI. VFX in this movie, actually pretty good. But now let's talk about our main dude in this movie, Indiana Jones, our main man. Harrison Ford, still great in this movie, and Indiana Jones actually has an important arc in this film. Throughout the movie, it does a better job at an aging plotline. Something else, again, it improves upon in Crystal Skull. Crystal Skull, it has this thing where it's scratching the surface of him. Like, what if Indiana Jones is aging, he's losing people in his life, and he just starts becoming a bit lonely? It was something that movie hinted on, but it didn't pay off. This one, it does that plot line and it does pay off. There's actually a plot thread in the movie where it takes place during the moon landing, and just these questions of, is this old archaeologist still important? And also when you get into his personal side, his personal life, and you find out what's happened between him and some of the people that we know from the other films. This film actually kind of surprised me a bit in how emotional it gets, which this film has references to other films. Not going to spoil it if you guys haven't seen it. Of course, you saw from the trailer, Sala appears in this movie, and so that was fun to see. This movie has one sequence that is paying off a moment in Raiders, and it did such a good job at it, and there was just so much love being thrown at the screen. I thought I was going to cry. All in all, I'm not quite sure what the reception is yet on people's ideas on how this film concludes. But as for me, for my money, a satisfying conclusion to this 5-film franchise. But there's also this new character, Indiana Jones' goddaughter, played by, let's see, I have her name up here, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I don't think I've seen before. And she was really good in this movie. She is so fun and so witty. She has so much chemistry with Harrison Ford. She has an interesting backstory with Indiana Jones. This whole dynamic between them where at times throughout the movie building up they're at odds with each other, but slowly throughout the story they kind of set up this bond between these characters actually, and that was actually kind of personal and effective, where you actually started to care about the relationship that these two people had. Now let's talk about the Dial of Destiny itself, which the trailer actually doesn't talk too much about. It shows pieces of it, but it doesn't explain in extensive details what it does. Again, I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't seen the movie. All I'm going to say is that it's a way better artifact than the Crystal Skull. I enjoyed the Dial of Destiny. A thing with a lot of potential, and some of it was actually met. And the fact that it's able to connect to Indiana Jones' arc in, again, personal ways, I thought was very impressive. And finally, the villain of this movie, better than Spalko. I enjoy Mads Mikkelsen. He has the misfortune of being cast in a lot of mediocre films. A more recent trend is that he's the villain in some bad movies. He was the villain in Chaos Walking, which is still one of my least favorite films of this decade. He was Grindelwald in Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, which was actually my least favorite film of 2022. But this isn't the case here. This actually is a good movie that he's been thrown in, that he's the villain of. And like I said, slightly better than Spalko. Mads Mikkelsen is just a good actor. Even in Secrets of Dumbledore, he still gave a good performance. But this does kind of carry into my issues that I wish he found overall better scripts and better characters, villains especially, that every time it's just kind of a guy that's bland. The Chief from Casino Royale might be the exception. But every other time I've seen him as an antagonist, he's been kind of boring. There's nothing too interesting about this character. Disposable is what I would call in general this movie, especially when it comes to the action. The action, like I said, entertaining. Still well made in spots, but nothing that holds a candle to that original trilogy. Watching this film, I was thinking, okay, this is good, but this feels like the Netflix movie of the franchise. And what I mean by that is that it's the movie that you'll put on streaming. You just want something to put on to kind of entertain you for a couple of hours, but it's not the greatest thing ever. This movie is kind of familiar in parts, just grabbing elements from other films that did it better, specifically those first 3 films. And I would say that because of that, because of the familiarity, just because of this film just being good enough, nothing outstanding, nothing exceptional, it does have a slow start. After the prologue ends and you're in that first act, things take a while to get going. Partly, it took a while for me to actually care what was happening in the story. The movie does get better as it goes along, but during that first act, a bit dull. It kind of dragged a bit, I'm not gonna lie. And last thing, there was this kid, this extra character that Indy and his goddaughter Helena are going on this adventure with, and he was okay. Nothing that compelling about him either. And I just thought it was a waste. So just in general, this film, it does feel like the DLC of a great franchise. Again, this franchise, it should have just stayed those original 3 films. And going into this film, I tempered my expectations to just wanting a film that was at least good, that entertained me enough, that was at least better than Crystal Skull, which this film is. This film is way better than Crystal Skull. It's a movie that I do want to see again at a certain point. You know, not a movie that I loved, but as far as just concluding this franchise, concluding the story of this iconic character, I thought this film did a pretty good job at that. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a B. So stay tuned for my next reviews, like I already promised, my review for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, as well as I'm going to be continuing my Christopher Nolan review series with Memento. So stay tuned for that review as well. Guys, if you like what you're seeing, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you missed the rest of my Indiana Jones reviews, I've created a playlist with all of them. You can check that out right up here. In the comment section, what did you guys think about this film? Did it live up to your expectations? Did it disappoint you? Whatever you think, leave it down below in the comment section, and I'll see you guys next time.